Hello everyone, this is Adam Carey. So today my chapter in the Lakota Way book that we had been assigned for class was on love. So chapter 5, I was going to start off the class by, having this on the smartboard at the front of the class and just, ask the class what they thought love is all about. So I was going to play this video, the song What is Love? By Hadaway. It's a pretty famous song. It's like a one-hit wonder, but you can hear it. But just for fun, just to engage the class, I was just going to play this video and then ask the students to take a minute to think about what you believe are some good elements found in love. So both good and bad elements. And then I was going to, while this video was playing, the music video, I was going to have them fill out a online poll through texting. So they would have texted my name to this number and they would have been able to answer what are some elements of love. And I wanted to introduce this to class because some people don't feel comfortable about talking about what they've experienced with, the subject matter or love. Or some people are just more shy. And so this is kind of more engaging with the audience. So I was going to ask what are some elements of love, and so they could have, this simulates what it would have looked like if they texted. So I'm just going to give some answers, like pain, because I'm asking for some bad elements of love too, like pain, happy, sad, respect. These are just some examples of some answers that students could have given, and the responses would have showed up on the screen. So the more duplicate responses you get, say if more than one person says happy, it just gets bigger on the screen. So I just wanted to build some background knowledge, get some people thinking about what they think love is, and then bring that to the discussion here. So the first story about love in our textbooks, let me make this bigger, was about the story of the Cottonwoods. So the story is about White Lance and Red Willow Woman. They had originally met at a summer gathering and fell in love. So everything good that you can think about love, or if we were able to use that presentation from just a couple of minutes ago about, from the board, get some ideas of love. Whatever you think about in terms of love and good aspects, these two demonstrated that. They were madly in love with each other. They wanted to be together. So unfortunately, Red Willow Woman was already promised to another guy, He Crow. Red Willow was honor bound to her father's wishes, so she respected her father. She respected his wishes to be married to He Crow. Before she got married to He Crow, White Lance wanted to propose to her, so he gathered a bunch of horses. He gathered 18 horses and he presented them to the family, but then he found out, that she was already promised to someone else. So this kind of made White Lance become depressed. He took off to be alone. He Crow and Red Willow would become married and eventually have children. After hearing that they got married, White Lance just became depressed. He was sad that they got married, but then he got even more enraged that she had children with him. So he basically was like, well, this is never going to happen. We were meant to be together, but it's just not going to happen. So eventually White Lance would marry Good Medicine, and Red Willow at the time was married to He Crow. Both couples were doing just fine from the outside looking in, except He Crow noticed that Red Willow Woman was not happy, or, she was doing everything that was asked of her, but he could tell that something was wrong. Good Medicine, White Lance's wife, had similar beliefs about White Lance. He did everything that he was supposed to in the relationship, but she noticed that he just, wasn't doing well either. So the couples, or He Crow and Good Medicine would get together and devise a plan. And basically the plan was to divorce their spouses so that Red Willow and White Lance could eventually be together. So he crow would throw a stick on the ground and say, "That stick is you, I cast you away." Basically, he's divorcing her. Good Medicine does the same towards White Lance. She removes everything from the lodge and says, "You are also now free." So the two were sacrificing their current relationships with White Lance and Red Willow so that those two could be together, because everyone knows that they should have been together originally because they were truly in love. So after 25 years of marriage, they were happily now together. Everything was perfect. The sky was more blue, the grass was more green, just they were madly in love with each other, and they were happy that they were finally together. However, what happens is that Red Willow would be attacked by a bear, and she's on her deathbed when White Lance comes across. He follows the tracks, because there's tracks of like blood and, you know, other debris, and he finds Red Willow and the bear. So he kills the bear, but in the attack, he's fatally wounded as well. But before they die, they both embrace and they become as one. So their bodies are discovered a few years later with the bears. Well, and the hunters that notice them also notice that, you know, their skeletons, like, they're intertwined, like when they died, they embraced each other, like, so that they could be together one last time. And so the story goes that the cottonwood saplings that were growing would represent the couple. When they died, they were intertwined. And so people, you know, the culture sees the cottonwoods as strong trees, and it represents the strong relationship between White Lance and Red Willow woman. And so some of the elements demonstrated in the story, sacrifice, respect, loyalty, heartbreak, pain, joy. I have respect listed twice, I'm sorry. And then balance. So some of these elements, hopefully, our students would have listed earlier, but I don't really see anyone thinking about the element of balance. And so I don't really have that much time to go into the story of the flute maker in depth, but the story is very similar. There's a lot of heartbreak and sorrow because the people, the two, like Dawn Woman and Cloud in this story, were supposed to be together. But it just didn't happen. The timing wasn't right. The feeling wasn't mutual in this story at first glance, but it turns out that Dawn Woman wanted to be with Cloud as well. So, you know, that story ends more in a happy manner as you know, as compared to the story of the Cottonwoods. But because elements of love found in the story of the flute maker, I don't really have time to go into that. But found in that is joy, sorrow, timing, fate, and also the element of balance as well. And in the story of the Cottonwoods, the reason why it demonstrates an element of balance is that White Lance and Red Willow women, they weren't allowed to be together, but eventually they would become together as husband and wife. And even though their marriage didn't last very long, it was meant to be. It had brought balance to the world. Even though their marriage was, you know, it took a long time to happen and it was so short, it was what was supposed to happen. Like, the true feelings that they felt for each other were real, and they were meant to be together. Even though it was short and sweet and like a happy, loving time, their short marriage, it was supposed to happen. It brought balance to the world. And this element of balance, basically this chapter I feel should have been just called Balance. You know, it talks about love, but the true thing that was brought out to me, and the most important thing in this chapter, was balance. And one part of the text describes balance as being demonstrated as a bow and arrow. So the man in the relationship is supposed to be the bow, and the woman is supposed to be an arrow. The two, as separate entities, do not accomplish anything. you need both of these for the thing to work. So in order for a relationship to work, the man has to be strong, the bow has to be strong. It has to be strong enough to send the arrow to its target. In order for the relationship to work, the arrow has to be straight. It has to be true. It cannot be broken. It cannot be snapped. It has to be intact, or otherwise the relationship's not going to work. In order for the target to be reached, like so, the relationship needs to be strong, and so the balance needs to be there. So one important thing that this thing is leaving out is that the idea of homosexuality. So obviously in a homosexual relationship, there would be two bows or two arrows. So this leaves the question, so how does that bring balance to the world if this story is saying that there needs to be a man and a woman, it's kind of going against the idea of having, gay people. And so I was taking that fact, we're going to have students in our class that are different from us. They might be homosexual. And so if you tell them the story of the bow and the arrow, they're like, well, what about me? And so the beautiful thing, and the thing that I took mostly from this text, is that the Lakota culture allows for this to happen, because if it was against homosexuality, it would actually bring further imbalance to the world. So even though, in a homosexual relationship there would be two bows or two arrows, you're like, well, how would that work? That's not how the story's supposed to go. But the Lakota community has chosen to acceptance and not oppression because of the element of balance. If they were to go against this, it would create more further imbalance in the world, and it would, leave people that are homosexual with nothing. It matters not whether one is the bow or the arrow. What matters is the mutual purpose they fulfill, the balance they achieve. So what it's saying, the text and the author is saying, is that to bring life into this world that is a product... I'm sorry, I shouldn't have read that. Basically, the idea that I'm getting is that the idea of balance, it matters for everybody, and we just can't single out a certain group. So also the book says to bring life into this world that is a product of lust rather than from bond of love is to give life a burden of imbalance. That was a little side note that the author threw in there, and I kind of agree with that as well. I mean, not everybody's perfect. Sometimes people have kids in wedlock. Relationships aren't meant to be. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that aspect from the book. But I do agree with the aspect of the balance, and that there's balance in everything, and that we need to appreciate that in terms of our classroom. So the whole idea of this class is, to bring what we have learned from the Native culture into the classroom. And so this element of balance, the lessons from balance, is something that we need to bring to the classroom. So if someone's having a hard day, or they come from a background that's not perfect, we have to bring balance to them. As teachers, we have to try. So I like to think about, instead of like in the story of the bow and arrow, instead of thinking in terms of man and woman, if we think of the bow as like a teacher and the arrow as a student, both aspects might be strong or need to be strong in order for the goal of education to work. And sometimes the arrow is just not, the students might be broken. Sometimes the bow might be broken, but we have to bring balance to both aspects. We have to if a student is broken, we have to fix them. We have to fix the arrow so that it can fly, so that it can work with the bow to achieve the ultimate goal of getting an education. So that's the main goal that I took away from the chapter and from the book on this element of balance. So I kind of got off onto a tangent at the end there, and it was kind of random, but I was just trying to get my thoughts across. So thank you for watching the presentation and enjoy the rest of your evening.